It all started with a stupid bet. One of those late-night, half-drunk dares that seem hilarious in the moment but spiral into something life-changing. My friends and I were crammed into Jake's basement, the air thick with the smell of pizza and cheap beer, laughing over some ridiculous challenge from an online video. That's when Mark, grinning like he just had the best idea in the world, pointed at me and said, "I dare you to go to the Halloween party dressed as a girl." The room erupted in laughter, and I rolled my eyes, fully intending to ignore it. But then the teasing started. "Scared you'll look too good? What, can't handle a little dress?" And before I knew it, my pride kicked in. I wasn't about to back down. "Fine," I said, shrugging like it was nothing. "But if I do it, you're all pitching in for my costume. And I'm going all out." I didn't think much of it at first. Halloween was weeks away, and I figured I'd throw on a cheap wig, some makeup, and call it a day. But as the days passed, the idea gnawed at me. What if I actually tried to look convincing? Not just as a guy in a dress, but as a girl. The challenge of it hooked me. So, I did what any curious person would do. I went down an internet rabbit hole. I watched tutorials on contouring, how to shape eyebrows, the right way to walk in heels. I read forums about breast forms, hip pads, and tucking. The more I learned, the more fascinated I became. It wasn't just about the dare anymore. It was about seeing if I could pull it off. The day of the big shopping trip arrived. My friends, true to their word, pooled some cash, and with a mix of nervous excitement, I stepped into a thrift store. I grabbed a floral dress, a cardigan, and a pair of low heels, then, heart-pounding, headed to the lingerie section for a bra and panties. The cashier didn't bat an eye, but my face burned the entire time. At home, I locked myself in my room and began the transformation. Shaving my legs was the first hurdle. I nicked myself twice, hissing at the sting. Then came the makeup. Foundation, concealer, blush, eyeshadow, layers upon layers, each step making my reflection less familiar. The wig was the final touch, long chestnut waves that framed my face in a way I'd never seen before. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see me. I saw a stranger. Soft features, delicate collarbones, lips painted a deep rose. My breath caught. I expected to laugh, to feel ridiculous, but instead, I just stared. There was something unsettlingly right about it. The party was a blur. My friends' jaws dropped when I walked in, and the compliments came fast. "Dude, you look hot." "No way that's you." But their reactions barely registered. Because for the first time, I felt something I couldn't explain. The way the dress hugged my padded hips, the click of heels on the floor, the way people glanced at me without a second thought, it didn't feel like a costume. It felt like a glimpse of something I'd been missing. That night, I didn't want to take it off. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of my bed, still in the dress, staring at my painted nails. The dare was over. I'd won. So why did taking it all off feel like losing? The next morning, I woke up with my mind racing. I told myself it was just the novelty, the thrill of doing something taboo. But then I found myself sneaking back into that thrift store, buying more clothes in secret. I practiced makeup in the evenings, wiping it off before anyone could see. The more I did it, the more the line blurred between pretending and wanting. Months passed. The initial shock wore off, but the feeling didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger. I started researching more, not just about crossdressing, but about identity. The words transgender and gender dysphoria kept appearing in my searches, and with them came a mix of fear and relief. Was this me? Was I a girl? The first time I admitted it out loud was to an empty room, my voice barely a whisper. "I think I'm a woman." The words hung in the air, terrifying and exhilarating. It wasn't an overnight change. There were doubts, setbacks, moments where I convinced myself I was just confused. But every time I tried to walk away, the pull came back stronger. Eventually, I told my closest friend, then my family, then the world. That stupid dare didn't just change my appearance for a night. It cracked open a door I didn't even know was closed. And when I finally stepped through, I found myself. Now, when I look in the mirror, the girl staring back isn't a costume. She's me, and I wouldn't trade her for anything. The first few weeks after admitting the truth to myself were a whirlwind of emotions, equal parts terrifying and liberating. I spent hours in front of the mirror, experimenting with different looks, seeing which version of her felt the most real. Some days, I get it just right. The perfect winged eyeliner, the way a certain dress made my waist look, and my heart would race with something like joy. Other days, I'd stare at my reflection and see only the parts that didn't fit, the stubborn traces of masculinity that makeup couldn't erase. I started small. Clear nail polish at first, then pale pink. No one noticed, or if they did, they didn't say anything. Then came the subtle changes, a more androgynous haircut, skincare routines that softened my face, clothes that weren't quite men's or women's, but something in between. Every tiny step forward felt like a secret rebellion, like I was slowly peeling away layers of a life that had never quite fit. Coming out to Jake was harder than I expected. He'd been the one to dare me, after all, and part of me worried he'd think this was all some weird joke. But when I finally sat him down, hands shaking, and told him, he just blinked, then grinned. Dude, well, I guess not dude anymore, that's awesome. His acceptance was a relief, but it also made everything more real. If Jake knew, then this wasn't just some private fantasy. This was my life now. Telling my parents was a different beast entirely. I rehearsed the conversation 100 times, but when the moment came, all my carefully prepared words evaporated. Mom, Dad, I think I'm transgender. The silence that followed was the longest of my life. My mother's face cycled through shock, confusion, and then, to my surprise, a hesitant understanding. Are you sure? She asked, and for the first time, I didn't hesitate. Yes. My father took longer. There were questions. Is this because of that dare? What if you change your mind? But beneath the skepticism, I could see him trying. That was enough for now. The real turning point came when I decided to go out in public as her for the first time, not at a party, not as a joke, but just as myself. I chose a quiet cafe across town where no one knew me, dressed in a simple sundress and flats, makeup understated but undeniably feminine. My stomach was in knots the entire drive there. What if someone stared? What if they laughed? What if they knew? But no one did. The barista smiled and called me ma'am. An older woman complimented my dress. For the first time, I existed in the world not as a man pretending, but as a woman simply being. I sat at that cafe for hours, sipping my latte, watching people come and go, and feeling for the first time in my life like I wasn't wearing a mask. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were awkward moments, misgendering from old friends, the occasional stranger's double take, the dread of public restrooms. But with every hurdle, I grew more confident. I started hormone therapy, my body slowly aligning with my mind. My voice softened, my skin grew smoother, and the reflection in the mirror began to match the person I'd always felt I was inside. Looking back, it's funny how something as silly as a dare could unravel the carefully constructed facade I'd lived behind for years. That night at the Halloween party wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. Now, when I walk past a mirror, I don't see a costume. I don't see a man playing dress up. I see me. And for the first time, that's enough. The first year of living openly as myself was like learning to breathe all over again. Every small victory, a stranger gendering me correctly without hesitation, the way my favorite skirt swished around my knees, the softness of my hair as it grew past my shoulders, felt like reclaiming pieces of a life I hadn't realized I'd been denied. But with that joy came a new kind of vulnerability, too. Dating was the hardest frontier. I'd spent so much time afraid to even look at romance, terrified of rejection or worse. The first time I matched with someone on a dating app, a sweet, nerdy guy named Daniel who loved indie films and bad puns, I nearly deleted my profile out of sheer panic. What if he took one look at me and realized I wasn't really a woman? What if he felt tricked? But when we finally met for coffee, his eyes lit up the same way they had in his photos, and when he leaned in to kiss me goodbye, his hand lingered on my waist like I was something precious. It didn't last. He moved for grad school 2 months later, but it taught me something vital. I was worthy of love, exactly as I was. Work was another challenge. I'd been at the same tech company for 3 years, known as the quiet guy in the corner who fixed servers and avoided office parties. Coming out professionally felt like stepping onto a tightrope. HR was supportive, but coworkers' reactions ranged from awkwardly overenthusiastic, "So, should we throw you a girl power party?" to carefully avoiding the subject entirely. Then there was Brad from accounting, who jokingly asked if I'd be using the women's restroom now. The way my female coworkers immediately closed ranks around me, "Back off, Brad," was more affirming than I could have imagined. The biggest surprise, though, was how ordinary it all became. Mornings spent carefully applying mascara turned into sleepy rushed swipes out of habit. The thrill of buying new jeans faded into just shopping. Even the mirror lost its power to shock me. The woman looking back was simply me, no longer a revelation but a fact. That's not to say everything was perfect. There were still days when dysphoria wrapped around me like a lead blanket, when my voice felt too deep or my shoulders too broad. Nights spent scrolling transition timelines, envying girls who'd started younger. The gnawing fear that I'd never be enough, not feminine enough, not brave enough, not real enough. But then I'd remember the first time my little niece, unprompted, drew me as a princess in her crayon artwork. Or the way my mom now absent-mindedly called me honey instead of buddy. Or the quiet pride in my father's eyes when he introduced me as his daughter at a family barbecue. 3 years after that fateful dare, I stood in front of the same basement mirror where it all began, smoothing down the ivory lace of my wedding dress. Jake, now my best woman, fussed with my veil, pretending not to blink back tears. "Who'd have thought that time I dared you to crossdress, you'd end up actually becoming a girl?" He laughed and I swatted at him, careful not to smudge my lipstick. Through the doorway, I could hear the murmur of guests, the soft chords of the processional beginning. My fiancé, a kind-eyed teacher who'd fallen for me during my awkward early transition phase and loved me even more fiercely now, would be waiting at the altar, no doubt adjusting his tie nervously. I took one last look in the mirror. The woman staring back was radiant, yes, but more than that, she was whole. No longer hiding, no longer pretending, no longer afraid. That dare hadn't just made me turn into a girl. It had led me home. The morning of my wedding dawned with the kind of golden sunlight that feels like a promise. I woke before my alarm, my stomach fluttering with nerves that had nothing to do with doubt and everything to do with the enormity of what this day meant. Next to me, my sister, who'd flown in from Seattle to help me prepare, was already awake, scrolling through her phone with one hand and sipping coffee with the other. When she noticed I was up, she grinned. Nervous? I exhaled a laugh, pressing my palms against my eyelids. Terrified. In the best way. The hours blurred together in a whirlwind of last-minute details. Hairstylists wove delicate braids through my chestnut waves. The makeup artist blended peach-toned shadows across my lids, and the seamstress made final adjustments to the dress that hugged my curves in ways my teenage self could never have imagined. Through it all, my bridesmaids, Jake in a fitted lavender suit, my college roommate Priya, and my little cousin Mia, kept the champagne flowing and the laughter steady. "You realize," Jake said as he fastened tiny pearl earrings onto me, "this is all technically my fault." He gestured dramatically at the room. The dress, the flowers, the disgustingly perfect love story. If I hadn't dared you to put on that hideous floral dress sophomore year. I swatted at him with a makeup sponge. Then I'd have probably figured it out some other way. Maybe with less glitter, though. The truth was, I couldn't imagine any other path to this moment. Every awkward stumble, the first time I'd worn heels to the grocery store and nearly face-planted in the cereal aisle, the disastrous early attempts at liquid eyeliner that left me looking like a raccoon, even the painful conversations with relatives who didn't understand, had led me here, to a version of myself who could stand in front of 100 people and say yes without hesitation. The ceremony was held in a sun-dappled garden, the air sweet with jasmine and the faintest hint of salt from the nearby ocean. When the music swelled and I stepped onto the petal-strewn aisle, I didn't see the guests turning to look. All I saw was him, my fiancé, Daniel, his eyes wide and wet behind his glasses, his hands trembling at his sides like he was physically holding himself back from running to meet me. Halfway down the aisle, my father squeezed my arm. "You good?" he murmured, and when I nodded, he pressed a kiss to my temple, a gesture so effortless it made my throat tighten. 2 years ago, he'd struggled to call me by my new name. Now, he walked me toward my future without a trace of hesitation. Daniel mouthed, "Wow," as I reached him, and the reverent way his gaze traveled over me made me forget every insecurity I'd ever carried. The officiant began speaking, but the words faded into background noise. All I could focus on was the warmth of Daniel's hands in mine, the way his thumb traced circles over my knuckles like he was memorizing them. When it came time for our vows, his voice cracked only once. "You once told me," he said, "that you spent years feeling like you were wearing a costume. But the first time I saw you, really saw you, you were the most yourself person I'd ever met. And every day since, you've taught me what courage looks like." I hadn't planned to cry, but the tears came anyway, happy and unashamed. The reception was a riot of laughter and terrible dance moves. Jake gave a speech that managed to be both heartfelt and scandalizing. For the record, I never thought my dare would land her a guy this hot. My mother toasted to the daughter I always had, even if I didn't know it yet. And when Daniel spun me onto the dance floor for our first dance, the world narrowed to the two of us, my head tucked under his chin, his heartbeat steady against my palm. Later, as we slipped away toward the waiting car, Daniel's suit jacket draped over my shoulders, my heels dangling from my fingers, I paused to look back at the twinkling lights of the venue. For a fleeting second, I saw the ghost of my past self standing there, the nervous boy in a too-big dress, terrified of being found out. I smiled at her. Then I turned toward my husband, toward the life we'd build, and let her go. Thank you so much for watching till now. It means the world to have you here. This community is all about empowering each other and celebrating the incredible journeys of everyone on their path to living authentically. If you're ever feeling lost or alone, remember you have a whole family here for you. Hit that subscribe button. Smash that like button. And let's keep inspiring each other, sending you all the love and strength in the world. Until next time, live your life by your rules.